This is Mr. Hanna. Welcome to What the Format. Today we're going to go over some formulas for circle, namely the circumference and the area formulas. Now, the circumference simply means measuring all the way around it. If you're doing other geometric shapes like a rectangle or a triangle, they'll call that the perimeter. So the circumference is just the perimeter of a circle, but they call it circumference because goes around. Circumference is from some Greek word or Latin word. I can't remember exactly which one, but it basically means around. And circumference is set aside for circles to kind of signal, hey, that's a circle, or a perimeter sets aside for other shapes. But they're really just the same thing, just a different word for it. So this circumference is denoted by a capital C. Then your area of your circle is denoted by your capital A. You'll notice that you have pi d or 2 pi r. So there's actually two equations for your circumference. We notice that area, though, we only do 1 pi r squared. Now there is a formula with the area in terms of diameter, but it looks kind of ugly, so they don't ever use it. Nobody ever really teaches it, which is also why pi d isn't used very often, because usually when students are doing circles, one of the first steps is to find the radius, which makes sense if you're going to do pi r squared, and so usually most students just stick with 2 pi r. Now, you need to know that it's pi d because they're starting to bring that into play more because it's a pretty simple formula, but I'm not a big fan of it because it distracts from pi r squared. So if you have a consistent way of attacking problems, find the radius, find the circumference, find the radius, find the area, it makes it easier than if you're mixing it up. Plus, I'm sure you've noticed in math, the more you have to memorize, the easier it is to forget something. And in math, if you forget the wrong thing, it's all over. It really is. Hopefully you're noticing that with my videos. There's a lot of things that you have to not only understand, but you have to memorize. And if you don't memorize certain things, you're in trouble because they'll keep coming back. And they're not things that you can just figure out. You either know it or you don't. This is the case here. You know what the circumference 2 pi r means, a equals pi r squared, you know how it relates or you don't. Now, let's look at how it relates real quick. In circles, there are sometimes what are called line segments. A line segment doesn't go on forever like a line. It actually has a starting and stopping point, okay? And notice this starts and stops on the circle, okay? When the end points of a line segment are on the circle, they call it a chord, okay? Now, the chord we're interested in, though, is the diameter. So what's the difference, you ask? Well, the diameter is the chord. See, notice its endpoints are on the circle, but it goes through the center of the circle, okay? So D is your diameter. It's a chord that goes through the center of the circle, which you'll be able to see by the dot there, okay? We don't care for any chord. When we're doing the circumference of the area, we want the diameter. Now, notice that the radius, R is your radius, okay? Notice that it starts at the center and goes to the edge of the circle and stops. But notice it's only halfway. So the radius is half of the diameter. Or another way to look at it, the diameter is twice the radius, depending on which way you're going. But since most of the time we want the radius, I like this formula. Okay, these two are true, but I kind of like to get rid of those. And I like to focus only on this. Okay, so my formulas are C equals 2 pi r and area equals pi r squared. Okay, so if they give me the diameter, what I do is I divide it by 2. Okay, so let's do an example. Let's say this is 20 meters. Okay, then your radius is going to be what? 10 meters. And then all you have to do is plug that into your equation. So in this case, my C is going to be 2 pi times 10. 2 times 10 is going to be 20 pi. Now at that point, you have to be very careful too. Sometimes they want you to keep the pi in your answer. We're going to add the units here, meters. It could be inches or feet or whatever. I always add the units last because they just get in the way of my math, right? They are what they are, you just add them in last. But here's my math, 2 times 10. Now, if they want it in terms of pi, you're done. If not, now you have to take 3.14 times 20. Okay, and that's the common number they use for pi. they could use the fraction, 22/7. They could take it out further because pi 3.141592 goes on forever, never stops. But 3.14 is usually where they stop it. So now you're a third grade multiplication problem. Throw in the decimal, that makes it fifth grade. But what we do is we bring down the 0, because 0 times anything is 0, so then we do 2 times 4, that's 8. 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 3 is 6. We have how many decimal places there? 1, 2. So we're going to come in 1, 2, and that's going to give us 62.8 meters. So these are the same answer if your diameter is 20. Now, what about your area, you're asking? Well, so now my area is equal to pi times what? Well, my radius squared. So order of operations, you're going to do the 10 squared first. So that's going to be 100 pi. Now be careful for area, you need to take your unit and write it squared. I've seen a lot of students miss points on tests because they forgot to write meters squared for the area. Circumference is just the unit, area is the unit squared. Okay, now 100 pi could be your answer, or we come up here and do 3.14 times 100. There's your 2 zeros, 413. Again, come in 2 decimal places, and you're going to get 314 meters squared. So in this case, the decimals all went away because of the peculiarity of the number. Now, this isn't always going to happen this way. If I made this 16 and this 8, then this would still be a decimal. So sometimes you have to watch for that. Different numbers will make the problem less complicated because things will cancel out. Sometimes they won't cancel out. You need to be ready for both. And of course, like I said, sometimes your teacher will use the fraction version. Now, I don't see this used very often. I'm putting it on there because you need to know it, but 9 times out of 10, you use 3.14 for pi. And I see that is most common. But now notice the side skill you need. These are your math facts and the rules you're learning, but you have to be able to multiply decimals over here. Do that multiplication and get the decimal in the right place and watch your units. Those are skills that you need when you're doing circumference and area of a circle. But this is how this all relates. Now, what you can do, if you'd like, is mix this up. Make that 18. So then that's going to be 9. And then practice doing the math. 16, 8. Practice doing the math. So, of course, if this was 9, you just put a 9 there, which would make this 81 pi, and that would make that 18 pi. So now your math here, that's 18, and then your math here, that's 81. That's all that's changing. The steps don't change. Just what numbers you put there change. So 10 times 2 is 20 is different than 9 times 2. But that's dependent on what your teacher gives you. Okay? Now that's moving forward. Okay? Sometimes they can have you move backwards, so they can actually give you the circumference. Now if they give you the circumference, okay, what we got to do is we have to work backwards. All this stuff is still the same. You still have the same equation, okay? But let's say they give you the circumference of the circle is 96 inches, okay? Well, all you have to do, okay, is take C equals 2 pi r, and you plug in what you know. You know C, so that's 96. You know the 2 pi, but you don't know r. So the opposite of multiplying, dividing. Since we're multiplying by 2 pi here, we divide by 2 pi, which cancels and gives us r. But what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Now, 2 will go into 96, 48 times. But now you see the problem, 48 divided by pi. Now, hopefully at that point, they let you leave it like that, okay? And you would say 48 over pi inches, because this was in inches, okay? But if not, now you have to do your decimal division, and if pi is 3.14, you're going to go 3.4 into 48. We don't divide by decimals, so we move this decimal over twice, which means we move this over twice, which means we have to add 2 zeros. So that's really 314 into 4,800. Put a decimal there. Now, why am I putting a decimal? A lot of teachers ask you to go out a couple number of decimal places. So to do that, we're going to add some zeros. You can add as many zeros as you want, but this is something, again, a skill. This is decimal division. That's 5th grade math. You're supposed to know how to do it. It's combining 4th grade long division with 5th grade decimals. If you're having any trouble with this, then your problem isn't with the the circumference of a circle or the area of a circle, it's actually the math that the problem requires. And that's a very common problem these days. There's two parts of your problem. There's your rule or concept that you're going over, and then there's the math the problem requires. If you can't do the math, that's different than not understanding the concept. Some students can do the math but don't understand the concept. Some can understand the concept but they can't do the math. So if you're struggling, one of the things you want to do right away is figure out what you're struggling with and then zero in on that. And it's kind of like going to a doctor. If they treat the wrong symptom, it's not going to cure the disease, is it? You got to find out which symptoms is causing the disease. So same thing, is it the math that's a problem or the concept? So in this case, remember we move the decimal over twice. What you do up here, you have to do in here. If there's no number to catch the decimal, you have to do it twice. Now, some of you might be saying, well, 96 over 2, where did that go? How did you know that was 48? Well, I have that memorized. That to me is a math fact. 2 goes into 96 48 times. If you didn't know that, you can just do it out here like this. That's 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Bring down the 6. There's your 8. 8 times 2 is 16. When your remainder is 0, there's your 48. I have that memorized. The more math you have memorized, you can start to see the easier math problems are going to be. Because 96 divided by 2 is a number that comes, I see it quite frequently. Anyway, 314 doesn't go into 4, doesn't go into 8, it goes into 480 one time. Always put that number up above where you are. Don't put the 1 in here. That'll throw you off, mess you up big time. 1 times 314. Remember, once we guess how much time this goes in, we multiply. Now, when you subtract here, if this number that you get is bigger than this, you didn't go in enough times and you have to go back and go up 1 and do it again, okay? If you're not sure and you don't want to just guess and check like that, simply write out your multiplication out here. 1 times 314, 2 times 314, and so forth. You can go all the way up to 9 times 314. Those are your 9 options. It takes a little longer to do it that way, but it definitely will work. Okay, I like to guess and check. I just kind of, if I'm off 1, I'll just go back and redo it. We subtract here. Remember we have to borrow. That's a 7, that's a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 7 minus 1 is 6. That's 1. Now bring down here. Now, again, this is where we guess. Well, look at just the front number. 5 times 3 is 15, which would fit. 6 times 3 is 18. That's too big. So right there we know it's 5 times. That's kind of a shortcut. 5 times 4 is 20. Carry the 2. 5 times 1, 5 plus 2 is 7. 5 times 3 is 15. You can see there's a lot of subtraction here, a lot of multiplication. These long division problems are no joke. They're difficult, okay? It's a math skill that I see a lot of students don't know how to do. So if this is the problem, you want to focus on doing some repetition with this till you get it. But I've done this for so long, I can just do this. I learned it in 4th grade, moving the decimal over twice. That was an easy fix for me, but here you go. So now when we subtract, we get 0. We have to borrow here, so 16 minus 7 is 9. That goes to 0. We go, ooh, 900. Well, 3 goes to 9, 3, right? But there's extra. So 3 is going to be a little too big, so I'm going to go 2. Okay? Again, you could guess and check. You could try 3. When it didn't work, you could go down to 2. It's not a big deal. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way, except for, of course, I know students don't like to take time on math problems. The more you have to guess here, and the more you have to redo, the longer the problem takes. To me, that's not a big deal. I just do it. But I've seen a lot of students struggle with that because they want to be done with the problem fast. That's something you're going to want to need to mentally prepare yourself for. Some math problems are just long. It's frustrating, but that is what it is. 2 times 4, 8, 2, 6. So when I subtract here, I'm going to borrow all the way over here. That 8, that 10 becomes a 9. 10 minus 8 is 2. 9 minus 2 is 7. 8 minus 6 is 2. Bring down the 0. 9 times 3 is 27, but you also have the 9 times 14, so it's probably not going to fit, so I'm going to go to 8. Now at this point, since I know this is 8, the question is am I rounding to 2 or 3 decimal places? Most teachers at this point will say 1 decimal place. So you can stop here. The 8 will tell you that you're rounding up. So your answer is going to be 15.3 inches is equal to my radius. So these are both the same thing right here. This has pi in your answer. Doesn't look very pretty, but these are the same thing. It's just a format thing. This is once I've done the division. Now, of course, that's rounding to the 10th. If I was rounding to more than that, I'd have to add another 0 and keep going, and I'd keep going through the same steps. So you would take 8 times this, subtract, bring down your 0, and most likely it's going to go in more than 5 times is what I would guess, so you would round that to a 9. If it didn't, then you would just leave it as an 8, and then 15.28 would be your answer. Okay? And there's the frustrating thing with math problems. You've got the concept, and you've got the math. And then different teachers ask you to do more or less math in some problems. And it's not even just the teachers. Some standardized tests you take, they want you to go to 2 decimal places, you got to do more math. They want you to go to 1 or the nearest whole number, just round that to 15. That some teachers do that, and you could put a stop there. But hopefully this helps you with the concept. You now know how to find the radius from the diameter. You just cut it in half, and then you just multiply it by 2 pi to get the circumference, or you multiply it by pi r, or you square it and then multiply it by pi to get the area. Okay, and then hopefully with circumference this helps you working backwards. Okay, area working backwards is a little bit more complicated. You divide by pi and you have to take the square root. So I'm probably going to save that for another video because that involves radicals at that point, and radicals are a completely different process. Those are definitely not 5th grade math, whereas this is 5th grade math and it will stay 5th grade math. So the trick is being able to do this. So if you're watching this video and you're having trouble with circles, is it the math, the long division that you're having trouble with, or is it these pieces here and how to put them together? And did you get yourself confused because of the pi d, 2 pi r, and you were like, which one do I use? Again, I like to try to be consistent. I would use the 2 pi r all the time. Does that mean sometimes you do double math? Sure, okay, but I don't think dividing by 2 and then turning around and multiplying by 2 is a big deal. It's easier for me, less memorization, it's worth that. And those are decisions you're going to have to start learning to make as a student. When there's more than one way to attack a problem or solve a problem, most teachers are okay with you doing it different ways as long as it makes sense. And if you can tell a teacher why you're thinking that way, usually they'll say, oh, okay, that makes sense. I can see why you're doing that. Okay, go ahead and do it that way. But a lot of students just try to copy the teacher and they don't really know what they're doing. That leads to problems because then when the numbers change, the situation changes, you have to be able to change with it. And if you don't know what the teacher did, you can't change. So just some things to start thinking about. You really have to orient your brain on math problems, and some problems are easier than others. Anyway, hopefully this helps with circles, circumference, and area certainly going forward. Hopefully this helps with the circumference going backwards. This has been Mr. Hanna with the format. Happy mathing.